La Cour considère que les violations par Israël de l'interdiction de l'acquisition de territoires par la force et du droit du peuple palestinien à l'autodétermination ont un impact direct sur la licéité de la présence continue d'Israël dans le territoire palestinien occupé. L'utilisation abusive, persistante de sa position en tant que puissance occupante à laquelle Israël se livre en annexant le territoire palestinien occupé et en imposant un contrôle permanent sur celui-ci, ainsi qu'en privant de manière continue le peuple palestinien de son droit à l'autodétermination, viole les principes fondamentaux du droit international et rend illicite la présence d'Israël dans les territoires palestiniens occupés. Choué, Bandari, Iwasawa, Nolte, Chargeworth. S'agissant de sa conclusion selon laquelle la présence continue d'Israël dans le territoire palestinien occupé est illicite, la Cour considère que cette présence constitue un fait illicite qui engage la responsabilité internationale de cet État. Il s'agit d'un fait illicite à caractère continu qui a été causé par les violations de l'interdiction de l'acquisition de territoires par la force et du droit à l'autodétermination du peuple palestinien qu'Israël a commises par ses politiques et pratiques. En conséquence, ce dernier a l'obligation de mettre fin à sa présence dans les territoires palestiniens occupés dans les plus brefs délais. Israel must comply with its obligations under CERD in circumstances in which it exercises its jurisdiction outside its territory. Having examined Israel's policies and practices, both in relation to East Jerusalem and to the West Bank, with a view to determining whether they amount to annexation, the Court comes to the conclusion that Israel's policies and practices, including the maintenance and expansion of settlements, the construction of associated infrastructure and the wall, the exploitation of natural resources, the proclamation of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, the comprehensive application of Israeli domestic law in East Jerusalem, and its extensive application in the West Bank entrench Israel's control of the occupied Palestinian territory, notably of East Jerusalem and of Area C of the West Bank. These policies and practices are designed to maintain in place indefinitely, to remain in place indefinitely and to create irreversible effects on the ground. Consequently, the Court considers that these policies and practices amount to annexation of large parts of the occupied Palestinian territory, that provision prohibits only the forcible transfer of Israeli individuals and businesses into the West Bank as well. The nature of Israel's acts, including the fact that Israel frequently confiscates land following the demolition of Palestinian property for reallocation to Israeli settlements, indicates that its measures are not temporary in character and therefore cannot be considered as permissible evacuations under the Fourth Geneva Convention. In the Court's view, Israel's policies and practices are contrary to the prohibition of forcible transfer of the protected population under Article 49, Paragraph 1 of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
This is a watershed moment for Palestine. Israel's occupation has been declared unlawful by the World Court, which has stipulated that it must be terminated completely and as rapidly as possible. This means Israel is under an obligation to end this illegal colonial enterprise unconditionally, and in our view, that means immediately and totally. All states and the UN are now under obligation not to recognize the legality of Israel's presence in the occupied Palestinian territory and to do nothing to assist Israel in maintaining this illegal situation. They are directed by the court to bring Israel's illegal occupation to an end. This means all states and the UN must immediately review their bilateral relations with Israel to ensure their policies do not aid in Israel's continued aggression against the Palestinian people whether directly or indirectly. يجب على جميع الدول الآن الوفاء بالتزاماتها الواضحة، لا مساعدات، لا تواطؤ، لا أموال، لا أسلحة، لا تجارة، لا شيء.
Our people want to put an end to this occupation. What happened today is a significant step in the direction of ending occupation and attaining the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including their right to self-determination, statehood, and the right of the refugees to return.
Consequently, Israel has an obligation to bring an end to its presence in the occupied Palestinian territory as rapidly as possible.
The United Nations highest court said on Friday that Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories and settlements there are illegal and should end. Its strongest findings to date on the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The advisory opinion by judges at the International Court of Justice, or ICJ, also known as the World Court, was not binding, but it carries weight under international law and could weaken support for Israel. This was presiding Judge Nawaf Salam.
The court considers that the violations by Israel of the prohibition of the acquisition of territory by force and of the Palestinian people's right to self-determination have a direct impact on the legality of the continued presence of Israel as an occupying power in the occupied Palestinian territory.
The court said Israel's obligations include paying restitution for harm and the evacuation of all settlers from existing settlements. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said in a statement, "The Jewish nation cannot be an occupier in its own land." Israel's foreign ministry rejected the opinion as fundamentally wrong and one-sided. The World Court said the UN Security Council, the General Assembly, and all states have an obligation not to recognise the occupation as legal, nor render aid or assistance towards maintaining it. A point echoed by Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki.
يجب على جميع الدول الآن.
All states must now fulfill their clear obligations. No aid, no collusion, no money, no weapons, no trade, nothing.
The case stems from a 2022 request for a legal opinion from the UN General Assembly, predating the war in Gaza that began in October. Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza Strip and East Jerusalem, areas of historic Palestine which the Palestinians want for a state, in the 1967 Middle East War. It has since built settlements in the West Bank and steadily expanded them. In February, more than 50 states presented their views before the court. Most states asked the court to find the occupation illegal, while a few, including Canada and Britain, wanted it to refuse to give an advisory opinion. The United States, Israel's strongest backer, urged the court to limit any advisory opinion and not order the unconditional withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Palestinian territories, arguing it could prejudice future peace talks.